Dedication on the parents also is important. While the child is doing their bit in the pool, but getting the food, even mental strength training. He would talk to me just about, if something has got you down, use it as motivation. Don't take it as a failure. Learn from it.
If you're just using your mental skills to earn money, that will likely be taken away by AI.
The Olympic bidding process is full of bribing. Everyone knows about this. It is for all sports. She came about very clearly and she said there are going to be certain guidelines. So when the Indian team also went, the Indian contingent went to say, give us the Olympics, we want to bid. She said, get your own affairs at home in order. Like I swam the Olympics without goggles because we didn't get good goggles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think I was the only swimmer who swam the Olympic heats without goggles. And once I asked him, suppose I hadn't made it to the Olympics, would you do it again? He said, of course. He actually sold our family house and put that entire money into moving us here and into our career.
And what is the approximate cost do you think they should plan for to be able to support their child in their own sporting journey?
We need to make sports a part of our everyday life. India needs you.
Yeah.
So get your sports science degree, get your sports psychology degree, come back here, help our teams. When I went up, they have a small square on the carpet where you're supposed to stand. And I looked up while they were reading my achievements and I smiled. And the President of India smiled. I was like, okay, let me try my luck. And I'm like waving. And at the back, security is like, no, stop. And then the President waved back at me. So, it was that really nice human touch.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Play More, Live More podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Nisha Millet, an Olympic swimmer, rather the first Olympic swimmer from India. Nisha, welcome to the podcast and we look forward to hearing your thoughts today.
Thanks so much, Patish.
Awesome. So my first question to you, Nisha, is I have spent a lot of time with you and I've heard so many stories of you. Why don't you just take us through how were you as a child and what inspired you to get to swimming?
I think I was quite an average child. It wasn't that I was very athletic. In fact, my parents were a little worried because I didn't have too many friends in school. I was very quiet. And I tried out various sports, which I think is very important for our Indian youngsters to expose them to different sports. I did a bit of gymnastics. I enjoyed it till I, went and got into the beam. The balance beam, it got quite scary. And I don't think I had that little bit of daredevil element, to it. And then I tried out badminton, which I was very bad at. Absolutely no eye-hand coordination. So I think finally it was swimming. I got in. It wasn't one of those love at first sight. You get in and you swim like a fish. I had some hydrophobia because I had almost drowned as a kid. So my first experience was the old-fashioned way of teaching, which is push the child into the deep end without teaching any skills. So for somebody who was already scared, it was really scary. I was, crying on the first day. I told my dad, no, I'm done. And then my dad said, Nisha, I paid 100 rupees for these classes in the 90s. That was a lot. And I said, okay, I'll continue with my classes. And that's how my journey began. But it really had started with me falling in love with the water. So first you have to really enjoy the sport. So before I could do laps, it was just me playing in the water, having a good time, learning to trust this new medium. And then I started loving it so much that I'll finish school, grab my swimming bag and whatever weather, and luckily we were living in Chennai at the time, I would go with my mum, dad, my sister. And my sister was a very bad asthmatic. And swimming is one of the best exercises if you have weak lungs, So the combination of it being good for health and a family activity, that's what drew me to swimming.
Well, beautiful. And you spoke about your father.
Yeah.
And I've seen an earlier podcast of yours as well where you speak about how your father actually, did a lot of sacrifices. I really want to bring out his story today. I think the world knows about your story, but the world also deserves to know your father's story. and also because a lot of Indian parents don't fully understand what does it take to raise an Olympian child.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can help us understand what was his thinking, how did he endure all of the sacrifices? Maybe social expectations at that point would have been very different from today.
Right.
How did he? What all sacrifices did he have to endure, and his personality? Just take us through that once.
So my dad, considering he was not a competitive athlete himself, he played a bit of, tennis, he loved boxing, and he always grew up kind of like how, the Williams sister, you've seen the movie about their father. He somehow thought I would be a tennis player. He said, I want my daughter to be the next Steffi Graf, But he had this idea that being a sports person was really good. And funnily enough, I never touched a tennis racket. And the good thing he did was expose me to different sports. And he would never push me if I lose interest. He would make me play a game for a while. If I lose interest, he'd say, okay, try something else. So it started off just letting me find my own way and seeing what I stick to. I think when he realized I was interested in swimming is I had just started training with a team and I got chicken pox. And I was so upset. I was like, I want to swim, and he said, relax, it's just a few days. It's contagious. You can't swim. I was like, okay, but I want to stay fit. Take me to the park. I'm going to run 20 rounds around the park. He's like, oh, wow. Okay, where is this quiet girl who was not, that confident, didn't really shine in any of the other sports. Suddenly, I'm so motivated. I think that self-motivation he recognized. So first thing I think is to recognize what brings that joy into your kid's life. Some parents have this preconceived notion, this is what my child is going to be. I'm a doctor, so they'll be a doctor. And similarly for my kids, I made sure that when they chose swimming, it was their own choice. They could have chosen other sports or any other activity. So he encouraged me by, I think, being firm, no late nights, eat more healthy. And I think I didn't realize fully what kind of sacrifices they made till I was much older. Yeah. When I turned 18 and I realized my parents, over so many years, I learned at the age of 9. So in 9 years, my father had gone through our entire life savings because to get me the best food, after I was 14 or 15, trying to get me to go to international competitions because I was beating the other girls in India. So he said, no, we have to get some international exposure. Yeah. So at the point where he moved us to Karnataka, to Bangalore to train because it was the number one city for swim coaching, for competitive swimming. And he actually sold our family house and put that entire money into moving us here and into our career. And if you can imagine, in the 90s, there was no funding. Swimming is an amateur sport, so you don't get prize money even if you win. So the maximum amount I've received is maybe with the Arjuna Award, you get 1.5 lakhs in those days. That would not, even suffice. My dad must have spent 80 to 90 lakhs just getting my sister in
that time.
In those days, in the 90s and early 2000s, just to get me and my sister the best opportunities. Right. And once I asked him, suppose I hadn't made it to the Olympics, would you do it again? He said, of course. So I think that shows you the mentality. One is almost like a risk-taking, what you see in entrepreneurs, of having that belief, the vision. And of course, this was my goal, right? As much as he wanted it for me, I one day, when I was 9 years old, was watching, it was actually 10, 9, I learned how to swim. At the age of 10, I was watching the Barcelona Olympics. And in those days, we'd watch on DD Sports. And, there was so much of excitement. And I saw swimming and I said, wow, I want to be at the Olympics. So I think one of the best gifts that he could give me, him and my mom, is not to laugh at this young kid, a teeny little kid who had this dream, And he said, I'm ready to support you, but you need to push yourself. So he realized I would wake up in the morning, honk on the horn if he's late, like, come on, we're getting late for practice. So that fire was within. It was not him having to force me. So even if I had to miss a friend's birthday party, miss a holiday, that never really impacted me. But I think now as a parent myself, and now I'm a swim parent or a sports mom, I understand in those days how difficult it was. We did not have transport. We took autos early morning. He moved our entire family, gave up his job. He was working with a top company in Chennai, moved here, started his own business. And every single day, morning and evening, because we would swim twice a day, he was there at practice. So that really shows you that the dedication of the parents also is important. While the child is doing their bit in the pool, but, getting the food, even mental strength training, he would talk to me just about, if something has got you down, use it as motivation, don't take it as a failure, learn from it. So I think he was way ahead of his time. And now when I look back, I always think of the words he said to me. And I sometimes say the same words to my own kids. But I think what he mainly sacrificed was his free time.
Right.
So, there was absolutely no free time between working, supporting 2 kids who are into competitive swimming. And so I think when I went to the Olympics, the best moment of my life would be making that call. He would, like I said, he's never missed a single session, but he had to let my mum and me go to Australia. My sister still had to be in school in Bangalore. So he stayed with her. And that was the ultimate sacrifice, not being able to see me in the run-up. And to call him and say that, Dad, guess what? I've qualified for the Olympics. So that's something that was probably more important to me than even hearing I got the Arjuna Award. That moment of
having goosebumps here. Like, just let's do this, honestly.
Yeah, it's a special moment, but it really takes a lot out of the parent. But it is definitely worth it. He doesn't ever feel that he would do anything different.
Right. Okay, so that was then.
Yeah.
Now, let's say if somebody is a parent today,
Yeah.
right, and their child actually has the fire that you had in your days,
Yeah.
and say somebody from a Jaipur or a small child, 6-year-old child in Indore,
Yeah.
wants to aspire to actually go and represent India and possibly win a medal for India in the Olympics, what sort of challenges will they endure in today's world? What are the infrastructure upgrades that we have already seen, facilities available to them?
Yeah.
And what is the approximate cost do you think they should plan for to be able to support their child in their own sporting journey?
I think that they would both have to work because it does cost a lot. Mainly, it's the travel, the additional expenses. Typically, your sport doesn't cost too much. Like in swimming, we don't have very expensive equipment unless you get to the elite level. But what is expensive is travel to and fro from training every day, traveling for competitions. Like I'm taking my children for a competition in Bangkok for their first international competition. It'll cost me for both my kids almost 2 lakhs. So it has to be done at the correct time. If your child is 6, you don't have to have a nutritionist. You don't have to send them to a foreign country. Let them slowly grow in the sport. And a lot of things, we have experts in our own country, which is very different from when I was swimming. The first time I met a dietitian or a psychologist was when I was already qualified for the Olympics. Here we have the best of our Indian athletes. A lot of them go out of the country, get degrees in sports psychology, sports physiotherapy, SNC, and they're coming back to help our swimmers or to help our athletes. So wherever you are, there is a way that you can get a hold of these experts. I know that even a nutritionist, they consult online. So you don't have to physically be in one of the metros. You could be in a smaller town. And if your child has that potential, there are so many scholarships and funds now that can help you. Agencies, whether it's a Go Sports Foundation, whether it's a JSW, so many academies who've really helped people from smaller towns, whether you see like a Mary Com, her story is so inspirational. Nowadays, if you have the talent and if you present yourself well, show your entire achievements, there is way that you can get funding where you don't have to go the same way, my parents did. But the main thing I think is the upgrade in infrastructure.
Right.
From 90s to now, there's a huge spurt in world-class facilities. Right? I think what needs to catch up, which I think you and me are always trying to solve, is how can we improve the coaching and the teaching.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure is much better now. Like I would travel, I remember in Chennai, 1.5 hours to swim into a 50-meter pool. But nowadays you have 25-meter pools, 50-meter pools, even in schools.
Yeah.
So your child can go first standard to 10th standard and learn swimming every single day. Right. So this is a boon. So really, when I talk to some of the stalwarts like Prakash sir, who's been into badminton for so long, he says the kids nowadays, they have everything. We are giving them whatever we didn't have when we were young. We are providing that for them. What we need is focus. What we need is clarity and that passion and fire from within, because that's what we had and that's how we got to the Olympics. We didn't have, a fancy tech suit. Like nowadays, every suit costs about 30 to 40,000 if you're doing a racing suit, which typically you should buy your kids if they're at a chance of winning a state or national medal.
Right.
You see kids doing a small school competition with a tech suit, So my daughters, it was very clear. It is not about the money.
Yeah.
I would tell them that when your results come to a point where you deserve or you have a chance at, where 0.1, 0.2 milliseconds will cost you a medal, then I'll invest in a suit. So even then I bought them the first level suit. And I said, when you get to the nationals, so don't spoil your kids is my message to them. At the same time, there are enough people that can guide you and so many agencies, companies who can really help you with different elements, which is sports, physiotherapy, psychology, and it is possible from wherever you are. If you look at the distribution of Olympians every year when we go to the Olympics every 4 years, we always have this map of India and they say how many Olympians from which states. It's pretty much spread out all over. You could be in the northeast, you can be, down south. The good thing is that you have excellent facilities now, better coaching, and right now what we need now is to bring out that performance.
No, sure. I agree. So just as a follow-on to that message that you just gave, like your kids are already competitively swimming, right? Like I think they've all won
They've
medals.
won some state medals. Now their next goal is to try and qualify for a national competition.
So now, thinking from your perspective as a mom, not as a swimming Olympian, do you ever worry that, let's say, if they don't get into your cadre of, elite athlete, right? Maybe this doesn't become a career for them. Do you ever worry that their academics is getting pushed out because they're competing right now at state level?
While I feel academics is very important, like even my parents, even though I took a year off trying to qualify for my second Olympics, they were very clear that your swimming will only continue if you get a degree or if you have. So not about coming first in class. That's, that's not possible if you're an elite athlete. But try and get a first class, study regularly, finish your exams. But at the same time, I feel that there is zero downside to sport.
Right.
Even if your child doesn't reach the Olympics, and very, very few, like less than 0.10 of people who are, training will actually reach that elite level.
Yeah.
But what they gain are life skills that cannot be taught in schools, right? So they learn time management skills. Like I would learn to lead the lane. I would start and 5 seconds behind me, the next person, 5 seconds behind me, the next. So if I stop, 5 kids or swimmers behind me would stop.
Right.
So at a young age, without being told that I'm being taught leadership, I learned these skills, how to manage my time and manage my studies and swimming, discipline, focus. So I see the difference between how my kids were before they started competing. I mean, all of us tend to spoil our kids. We want to give them a good life. And when I started them with swim training, it's automatic. Now at 9 p.m., the lights are off, and they're so tired that they sleep in 2 seconds.
Right.
Because they've had a long day, they've done their studies and they're swimming. So it gives you a certain skills that can be utilized for everything. Like I don't feel I could have run my business or been an entrepreneur if I wasn't a sports person.
Great.
It gave me, taught me how to persevere. Like I'm sure all of us who run businesses, COVID was a very tough time, uncertain, but we were able to stick to that adversity. So to the parents out there, don't worry only about medals or achievements. Is your child using their time well? Are they being physically fit? Now we know that physical and mental wellness is very closely tied.
Right.
So if your kid is healthy and physically fit, they will have a better diet. They will be surrounded by people in a similar kind of peer group who have some goals, very structured lives, more discipline. So there's really no downside. And I tell this to all the parents who come that sometimes a child just wants to enjoy the sport. They might come every day to the practice.
Yeah.
Their goal is not to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So you have to, understand that, and your expectations also should be the same.
Correct.
But it will help you in your future. And that now it's not only just, skills that you learn, but the business of sports is the fastest growing amongst anything else,
It's actually true.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was just listening to a podcast of Vinod Khosla, the venture capitalist now and then a celebrated entrepreneur. And he talks about this one very important thing that going forward in the world of AI, right?
Yeah.
If you're just using your mental skills to earn money, that will likely be taken away by AI. But if you're using your both mental and physical skills to earn your bread, then it will still happen, but it'll still be taken over by AI, but maybe that's 30-40 years away.
Sure.
Right? So I think sports from that perspective, I mean, is probably the safest place to go, and then the business sports is for sure growing. Okay, but coming to that a topic of your kids,
Yeah.
so is it like safe to say that it's an absolute myth that you have to sacrifice academics to pursue sports? Can we just say that it's a myth in India?
Definitely. I mean, I have a good friend who's a sports doctor. So he did his MBBS while representing India
Right.
and going, to international meets and winning medals for India. Now, if you can study medicine and do a competitive sport, that is amazing. Right. So I think that this myth about you can only achieve if you're, focusing only on studies. In fact, it gets a very well-rounded person when you're doing both extracurricular and you're doing your studies.
Right.
There's a very prestigious scholarship called the Rhodes Scholarship,
Right.
where you go to Oxford, you get a full scholarship to go and study in Oxford. And there the criteria is the extracurricular. Everybody has good marks. I'm not talking about class toppers, good marks through their career. But what separates the people who ultimately get this award, the scholarship, and a lot of swimmers and other sports people have gotten it, is the fact that their extracurricular makes sure that they have this good, well-rounded personality. So I feel don't use the study as an excuse. In 10th standard, there is no need to stop your child swimming or competing. Maybe you can reduce a few sessions.
Right.
Maybe get a tutor to help them if they're struggling a bit, because it's the lack of time that they have. It's not a lack of capacity. In fact, athletes is shown that most athletes have better concentration, more discipline, time management is better. Like we have, some of the top athletes of the world who study in the toughest colleges, whether it's Stanford, they're biomechanists, and there's so many athletes who have done both. So it's not that it's not possible, but I think it's an Indian parent, view that we have to choose one or the other. And if you can manage to keep your kids swimming, and 10th standard is just a small exam. You have your 12th grade, you have your college exams. It's very much possible to do both, but it takes some involvement from the parents as well, right? So maybe you have to also sacrifice a little bit of your time, help them out at a young age. Like I have to sit with my kids before this to give them that extra time, help them to speed up their studies. At the same time, make sure they get enough sleep. So it's more of a balancing act, but it's very doable.
Beautiful. So to all Indian parents, it's a myth coming directly from none other than Nisha that sports and academics can indeed go together. Okay, awesome. So moving us along, so then it begs me to ask this question to you: why are we so ridiculously bad in swimming in India? What has I think this question, like everyone has this question in their mind, right? Like we have never won a medal, right? We have hardly had participation, and when we some rare success in you and Sajan and few of them. Why is it that I think in cricket we have done reasonably okay?
Yeah.
In badminton we are doing now
Very well
now. So why is it that swimming has not taken off in India? What prevents us? Like what's the real problem?
I think the first thing is that we don't see swimming as a regular activity. We look at it as a summer camp sport. March and April, everybody wants to swim.
Right.
And then, after that from, by June, when the rains hit, people stop. But now, as a swim teacher, somebody who runs an academy, we have now solved all the issues for you. We have indoor pools, heated pools. If you're worried about what swimsuit you can wear, we have tiny swimsuits, full coverage swimsuits. So there's nothing really that can stop you. The myth of chlorine tans you. We have debunked those myths also. So our main issue is we need to get enough people into the sport and keep them in there in the long run. It has to be, obviously we also have to work on improving our swim teaching and swim coaching. So those of us who are in the business, we try and, do the train the trainer courses. We learn from the Australians, learn from the Americans, because they're doing something right. With much smaller population, they're able to produce so many champions. Yeah. And if you look at it, one thing we lack, which now some of our Indian swimmers are going, is something like an NCAA system.
Right.
So many, now we have 3 or 4 Indian athletes, whether it's a Likith, the actor Madhav and his son, another boy Tanish. Some of our top athletes are now in the NCAA system, where you're now training with the best in the world. Whether it's Leon Marchand from France, he's in NCAA. He's training with Michael Phelps' coach, So it's not that you have to only go to America, but you need a system like this that grooms the swimmers, athletes, because that allows you to compete with the best in your division. So you can be in a Division 1 team. You're training with, competing against world champions. If you're not at that level, maybe you'll be in a Division 2 team. So it's something where I feel the biggest drop off for us is after high school. Indians are not too far off. Like, Sri Hari, who is our double Olympian, Sri Hari just missed the top 8 in the university games, by 0.01. So he's in the top 8 of the world if you look at it. After that point, there's a huge drop off because there's no university level sports. They have a few events, but it's quite ridiculous. You'll have 3-4 swimmers. I know my university coach used to just put me a name and everything. Swim 5 races, bring back the trophy because there was no competition. So we somehow along the way get lost. The time when other athletes are specializing, which is 18 and above, our athletes have now burnt out. We've put too much pressure at a young age about medals, success, overtraining. So if you see the foreign countries, they go about it very slowly. They gradually build up the intensity. They don't overtrain. So we have to realize that medals is not everything.
Yeah.
We want to see longevity in the sport, right? So
and this is the outcome.
if you look at Sajan, he's in his 30s and he's still competing.
Correct.
So that is what we need to get us somewhere, because I think a lot of athletes now are in their 20s and 30s winning Olympic medals. It's no longer that you have to be 16, 18. But we need masses to learn the sport. That is the first level.
So this NCAA system that you spoke about, can an Indian child also apply for NCAA and get scholarship and go to US? Like, is it available
It is, depending on your timings. Obviously, your grades have to be good.
Right.
You shouldn't be failing subjects, but you can get a fully paid scholarship. And if you're trying to get into a Division 1 team, you need to have swum quite a few of the international events. There are these FINA points, which is a World Aquatics body, their points. And the fact that we have about 5-6 athletes now who are in these colleges. Right. So, I've seen them really improve, where it's very, very professional. So each team functions like a competitive team. They have their own biomechanics specialists, psychologists, and also you're away from India with all the issues, whether it is politics, whether it is, lack of, funding. Everything is taken care of, but you need to get yourself there. So for that, you have to be at a good level. Where we are losing people, unfortunately, is the junior or the school level. So when they come to the 10th grade, you're not exactly ready now to go to NCAA yet. That is where people, mostly the parents, sometimes it's not the kids, who are taking that call that, I don't know, I don't think there's a future in the sport. Yeah. But that's why my appeal to them is keep them in the sport, because there is a future now as being a professional sports person in a different field.
Right.
And even in India, we're starting to have colleges now who are calling athletes to come and compete for them.
Right.
So slowly the system is building up. Will we get to NCAA level? Highly doubtful, because nobody is able to do this.
Right.
This is something unique to, America, where even the Europeans are sending the top athletes there. But we can definitely do it. Even if you feel like you don't have the funding.
Right.
If your child is talented, you can apply, and any Indian can go in and be part of the system.
Right. So what's the role of swimming federations in India? Like, there's so many state federations. I was reading that I think many state federations, state swimming federations or national swimming federations, etc., have some IS officers heading those federations.
Yeah.
I think for the interest of the viewers, what do they do? What is their job and what is broken there?
If you look at the federations that have done well, either if you look at a BCCI, they have really run it like a business. They're very, very professional. In India, unfortunately, there is so many politicians involved, so many, IAS officers who might be well-meaning, but they still don't understand the sport. They don't, have that good connection with athletes, understand what exactly they need, and right now that sports bill has come out, the policy, there's a lot of good changes. If they can implement that, it's good. But the federations right now get so much of funding. I don't see that transferring, say, 80 to 100% to the athletes. And so even the national federation will send it to the state federations. But how is that be utilized in a proper way? The accountability, the audits, where is this money going? Is it going to the right hands?
Right.
So many times, like you would have heard of recently at the World University Games, kids have paid their way there, and then the officials have forgotten to give their entries.
Wow.
It's a similar state for me. I was the only one and the first to qualify for the Olympics. Gave my timing sealed and stamped from Australia. They're very thorough. I did this qualifying time in Australia. I go 3-4 months later to the actual Olympics, and they've given my timing as 10 seconds slower. Not 1 second, 10.
10
now,
seconds.
10 seconds in a 200 is a huge amount. So I was in the slowest heat. with a few athletes from Africa who had never really swum competitions before. I won my heat by some 20 seconds.
Wow.
But the point was, at the biggest meet of my life,
Yeah.
error from a national federation is unacceptable. So the problem is they're letting us down more than helping us. The good thing now is with social media, people being very vocal, athletes being vocal, people who are, who have been wronged are bringing it to light. So it's tougher to get away with this. At the same time, we need to be very wary of not only women, but even young boys, going about sport the right way, being safe in the sport. And I don't think the federations do enough. Like if there was some complaint about a coach, they would maybe penalize them for a little while and then they'll be back in the sport.
Right.
So we need to provide like a safe environment. It starts with the federation working with the state federations and the clubs and the swimmers. For me, I go out of my way not to work with the federations because my experience has never been great in the past, So while we go to the meetings and stuff, I have not seen enough being done. If you look at the Athletics Federation, why have they turned around Indian athletics? Why has a Neeraj Chopra been able to come out? I mean, obviously he's talented.
Yeah.
But if the federation and that entire system was broken, he would not have got those gold medals.
Right.
So we have somebody called Adil Sumiribala, who is an ex-Olympian himself, who runs the federation. So he was telling me a great story about how just one competition before the Olympics, he decided to rest Neeraj. Being an athlete, understanding the sport, funding was there to go to this big event. He said, no, Olympics is the target, let's rest. And he got so much of backlash. He got letters from the central government, the FAMSA and the Indian Olympic Association saying, why are you resting him? He needs to be competing. He just said, listen, you can, if you want to fire me after this, it's fine. Yeah. But right now, I'm telling you as an athlete, as the person who runs this federation, that he will rest in the lead up to the Olympics. And that made the difference, and that made him our first, medalist. And so that was such a big deal for Indian athletics that it's like a reform, whether it's hockey.
Yeah.
So it can be done. I'm not saying that all federations are bad, but we need more sports people, not only in the federations, but making decisions.
Yeah.
I'm in a couple of committees, but I'm not kidding. I don't do anything.
Right.
It's a very, Pavanchani kind of role where I'm on it just to show that we have Olympians and Arjuna awardees. Any, topics that we bring up or any changes that we suggest, people note it down. But nothing ever, goes forward.
That's right.
So it's tough because you want to help. At the same time, you feel like I'm not playing that such a vital role.
Right.
So let me focus on my area and do my thing in my own way.
Right.
So that has to change.
Actually, I was reading about NCAA, the US system. And I think the key difference between NCAA system and the Sports Federation system of India is that we are not performance driven.
Yeah.
Like ideally, if swimming as a sport is doing so bad, either just stop this federation or reduce their funding
or just reforms.
Like I think there's just no accountability. Nothing happens, right?
Yes.
Every year the same story just keeps moving along. Okay, so you have seen sports bodies the world over, right? How would you describe your experience training in Australia? What was the difference there versus what is the difference today in India? Like if you were to compare Australian swimming ecosystem today versus the Indian swimming ecosystem of today, what would be the top 5 bullet point differences for you?
The first thing is that swimming is part of their curriculum. Sports is part of their curriculum where you get marks. So if you don't pass like one lap of swimming, you don't pass to the next year.
At the school
level.
Okay.
So one is because swimming is also a life-saving skill.
Right.
But now if you have every single child in Australia swimming, you can understand why they have so many Olympic champions.
Right.
They invest heavily in swim teaching. I'm not talking about coaching. Coaching is for elite. The swim teaching is at such a high caliber, and also parents are educated where they say, this is not short term. It's not about in 10 days, my child should swim from A to B. It's about when you come to our swimming school, you will keep your child in for 1 year.
Right.
Or 2 years, and then we will make them good swimmers, so that change of mindset. Number 3, like you said, it is an inclusive, a program where they're helping out the junior athletes. I know if you reach certain timings, like you said, performance driven. If you're able to achieve certain timings, then you're eligible for some funding from the government, even at a junior level. So they have a wonderful thing called the Telstra Dolphins. So that is the national squad, the ultimate squad. But even at a junior level, you can qualify for this. They have junior cutoffs. You get funding. So that's unheard of. I know there was a very talented boy who lost his dad, and I knocked at so many doors in India saying, this boy is a national champion.
Right.
His dad passed away very tragically with COVID. Please give him funding. No, he's a junior athlete. And like, but he's the number one junior athlete. No, when he's a senior athlete, I can fund him. So that's like a systemic issue, which shouldn't be the case, you know. The next thing, like I said, is the fact that they welcome other people and they're open to sharing knowledge and information. When I went to Australia, they're like, come into my school.
Right.
Come see how we run it. I said, what about your certification program? How do you come see what I'm doing? Formulate your own thing. We are happy to share. You know, so that's my whole concept, that if we work together, you know, so like right now, there's some of our academies are working together,
Yeah.
and we're able to grow together.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise what happens, everyone wants to do their own thing, you know, and there's that separation where I'll do it, I won't tell the others what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's more
So
competitive.
if that was the case, the NCAA system wouldn't exist, right? It will be only for Americans. Here, even the coaches there say that our swimmers get better because the best from all over the world come. Everyone competes. We have this amazing, highly charged atmosphere. We have professionalism at its highest.
Right.
The fourth thing I think is the allied staff. It's not just the swim teaching, the coach and the student. It is that entire support system, which is what we lack. So slowly it's coming in. I'm so happy to see Indian athletes learning, getting degrees and coming back to India. Like, what's the use of you getting your degree and staying there? I mean, of course, it's a choice, but India needs you.
Yeah.
You know, so get your sports science degree, get your sports psychology degree, come back here, help our teams.
Right.
Because it's so unaffordable to go abroad, which is why my parents spend so much. But if you can get the best facilities, teaching, venues in India, you will automatically start producing, you know, better athletes. And I think the fifth one, like you said, we need to keep politics out of sport.
Right.
And the one good thing, we have a new, IOA president. She's a female swimmer. It's the first time ever.
Oh, is it?
Yes. So
Okay.
ST Coventry, she's from New Zealand. And she's just straight talking, you know. Normally, you know that the Olympic bidding process is full of bribing.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about this. It is for all sports. She came about very clearly and she said there are going to be certain guidelines. So when the Indian team also went, the Indian contingent went to say, give us the Olympics, we want to bid. She said, get your own affairs at home in order.
Wow.
You know, this is the first time that
Wow.
they've had the guts to say, not just to India, but to other countries who they feel are not up to the mark. Your sports administration, your federations, accountability, like you said. They've pointed it out, saying India has to produce better infrastructure, they have to invest more in sports, and this actual money should go into the system and actually affect the athletes. So while it was upsetting, obviously, to be told that you're not in a position really to bid for the Olympics, but it's a good wake-up call. And, you know, I think there are lots of people, mostly private parties, but slowly, like if you see in Odisha, how well they have set
Yes,
it up. You know?
absolutely.
I went to do a course there to train the teachers. They're all over Odisha from small villages. And, after the course, the sports minister of the state, he came, he had a special event. Each of these coaches from these small areas, which are unheard of, get to stand in front of the sports minister of the state and say, this is why I want to teach. And he encouraged them saying, yes, you might have a very small pool, but we will help you. We will give you funding. If your athletes are good, we'll bring them to, our main center, our center of excellence. I was so impressed. Even with me, he came and said, how can we improve? What more can we do? So if a place like, if a state like Odisha can do this, there is no reason why even a Karnataka cannot up its game.
Correct.
While I see improvements, I don't think it's fast enough because the world is so far ahead of us that we are lagging behind.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing this. Well, let me take you back to the moment when you actually got the Arjuna Award and you walked into Rashtrapati Bhavan. How was it like for you?
That was quite a surreal experience. First of all, I was 18. So 2000 was a very big year for me. First, I qualified for the Olympics. And then typically, you hear of Arjuna Award going to older athletes. So when the federations were given the papers to recommend athletes, they put my name in, not expecting it. And before I knew it, I got a call while in Australia saying that you're going to be going to get the Arjuna Award. You have to, come to Rashtrapati Bhavan. So the excitement, first of all, few weeks later was my Olympic trip. And then I got to go and we had rehearsals where you go into Rashtrapati Bhavan. They tell you where to stand. They give you all this, protocol, how to stand in front of the President of India while they're reading your achievements. Like, don't make any sudden movements. There will be security guards here. And I was just so excited. I was, I think, one of the younger ones there.
How old were you?
I was 18. So it was very exciting. And the next day, my parents and my coach, Pradeep, who really has been a, great support to my family and so pivotal in my career, he was also there. So to see him come down, and I think I was probably one of the first athletes of his to get the Arjuna Award. So he was so excited. And when I went up, they have a small square on the carpet where you're supposed to stand. And I looked up while they were reading my achievements and I smiled. And the President of India smiled. I was like, okay, let me try my luck. And I'm like waving. And at the back, security is like, no, stop. And then the president waved back at me. So, it was that really nice human touch. And it's not about the money. It's not even about the award.
Absolutely.
But just the recognition that at 18, the president of India is there. And after that, he comes with all the athletes and you can introduce him to your family. So such a moment of pride to say, this is my mom and dad. This is my coach. So very emotional moment. And it's so exciting that now I'm on the Arjuna Award and Dronacharya Award committee. So every couple of years, they call different athletes. But, every time we put that name down on the paper and we debate about it a lot, we look at the achievements, but you know how much that would mean to an athlete. And nowadays, the good part is they've added more awards. They bring the number up because we're actually producing that many world champions and world-class athletes. So what was important, I think, is to understand a sport like swimming, whether it is me getting to the Olympics for the first time or after that Sajan Prakash doing an A qualifying time, which is he did the 8th place time of the last Olympics, which is very difficult, to do. And that also has to be recognized. It's only not about Olympic medals.
Yes,
because so many sports don't have Olympic medals. So we have to look at it in context of the sporting environment and try and encourage. And, I think in the next Olympics, there's going to be cricket as well. So I can imagine the excitement that Indians, maybe we'll have more Indian viewers. So my only thing is that sports has to grow in popularity.
Yes.
Right. So if there is a cricket test match and the Olympics, you should be watching the Olympics or at least watching both.
Okay.
So there's a funny story where I was doing the commentary for the Olympics and we were all so excited and India's winning medals and we look at the cameraman and he's behind the camera watching cricket on his phone. And we're like, hey, listen, our Indian athletes are here. So we still have to understand and take pride in our athletes. So even if they make it for the first time, like a Deepa Karmakar, what a story in gymnastics. We need to celebrate them and not just say, where are the medals? It's also about getting to that level of excellence.
I keep telling to everyone that what you guys go through, right? I think just that overwhelming set of emotions.
Yeah.
I think academics can just never give you that.
Definitely.
It's impossible, right? Only sports can give that amazing, overwhelming emotions in your life, which can, of course, it can give you a high at times and it can give you a low at times. But I think it is never, it is full of drama, emotions. It is.
So, and to show that also anything is possible, I think a very good example of that is my neighbor and good friend Rohan Bopanna.
Yes.
In his mid-40s, world number 1, Wimbledon champion.
Brilliant.
And somebody who did not achieve much at a young age. He said, my friends would not be so impressed by me. They wouldn't pick me, as a doubles partner. And then he stuck it out. Right. So the answer, the moral of the story is if you stick with it, if you put 100% effort, maybe you won't be like a Rohan Bopanna, everybody can be, but you will reach the heights. But the main thing that sports teaches you is not to give up. And that attitude will transfer to the rest of your life. So we need to look at sports as something important, not as a extracurricular, like we call it, or a summer camp sport. Yeah. You're talking about swimming. And, you see some talented kids. But either there's a lot of excuses or it is like, I'll see you next summer. We need to make sports a part of our everyday life. Right. And nowadays we have facilities, right? Machaxi, so many other brands. You have so many facilities, whether it's pay and play, so just about keeping fit. Yeah. So one important part is parents also need to get involved.
Right.
If you are going and playing badminton, your child is more likely to play badminton.
Correct.
Or at least to be active. So my kids see me being active. They see me having body pain and saying, it's fine. It's the art of life, If my hands are sore after doing a weightlifting session and I have, some calluses, I'm like, this is normal. This is good. It means that I've done something. Yeah. I keep telling them if you're not tired after a tough workout, then there's an issue. So also teaches kids and adults to be mentally resilient.
Yes.
Overcome odds. Because most of the time in sport, you're failing.
Yeah.
People only see our victories, right? But the number of times I've lost a race or I've cried, we call it croggling. Crying in your goggles. So croggling. So I've cried after a race. I've not done a best time. But you just learn to overcome that and move on to the next one. So you have to, at some point, learn your lesson and move on.
Oh, absolutely. So actually, to that point that you made, it's a very relevant point, not just for kids, actually, even for adults.
Yeah.
Now, so let's say if you wouldn't have gone on to achieve, this success, huge success in swimming. Let's say if you turned out to be an average swimmer, right? Do you still think it would have been worth it?
Definitely. I think my journey in sports has taught me so much. So if you look at it, even when I tried for my second Olympics, I missed 2 Olympics and I only made 1.
Right.
So 96 I missed out. I was 14. 2000 I made it. 2004 also I missed out. And while the 2 Olympics that I missed hurt very badly, especially the second one because you're already an Olympian, the kind of life lessons it's taught me, the friendships we've made, I think the bond that you have, like you mentioned how sports is like cuts across boundaries. So I feel that there is no downside to sport, and I feel that even if I had not got to the Olympics, I would still have put my kids into sports.
Right.
So even when they were younger, I put them in gymnastics. They did some CrossFit. They did a bit of badminton. They did so many sports, little bit of running. Even now, even though they're training for swimming, we also need to make sure our kids play other sports. Like my children go and they're part of their school dance team.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we don't over-specialize and too soon. Do it slightly later and let it be the kid's choice. In India, unfortunately, a lot of it is parent privilege, right? So it's like I couldn't get to a certain point. I couldn't get to this medal. So I want to see that for my kids. So if you're doing that, it's very tough, to see those results. It has to be your child's choice. Even my kids, they know that tomorrow if they tell me I'm not enjoying swimming, I don't want to swim anymore, I'll be okay. I keep telling them this is not my journey. I've done my bit, I am ready to support you. At the same time, it is a lot of sacrifice, right? But the good part about that is I feel the community. Yeah. I think in COVID, I realized this, where after COVID, you'd have noticed people want to walk, run, play paddy, play football in a community environment. You make new friends. So we were so tired of sitting in our own rooms, being, even on the terrace. You'll find some neighbor, you'll be playing badminton with them on the terrace or across your gate. So it went back to the old days where it was very simple, where movement was important. So we need to just inculcate that in our everyday life.
Right. So
I don't have.
So I think both of us have crossed middle age now. Like, I think if you just compare yourself with, say, your peers, right? Your friends, people who never adopted sports in life. Do you feel that health-wise, fitness-wise, those early years of sports adoption or swimming in your life today plays a huge role, or do you think probably it is okay?
I think it's important, but also to show that even if you adopt a sport later in life, it still can be done.
Okay.
It helps me because, like they call it physical literacy.
Right.
So they say that if an athlete starts in their 20s, they are still a beginner in the eyes of that sport, right? But if I've started at the age of 9 or 10, the physical literacy has been built up over the years, so I'm not a beginner anymore. Right. So you can start at any age, but you need to stick to it. That's one thing. So I think tell parents that if your child or you start a new sport, stick to it for 6 to 8 months before you know whether you like it or not. And also, I think in our 40s, one important thing is try different things that are challenging to you. We get very comfortable. Like, I'm good at swimming, so I'll only go and swim. But here I decided, okay, let me join a CrossFit gym. Let me learn weightlifting. Let me try and do gymnastics, which I'm not so great at. Or even like running, which I really struggle. We are so used to the water, land is not so convenient. But because I've been an athlete my whole life, I don't mind failing, looking like a fool. And also I feel even when I compete in a small competition, I look at competition as something exciting. And that's come from being a sports person.
Right.
Whereas and this is also true of exams.
Yeah.
I'd see the smartest kids get so scared and they get so nervous. They'll be having fever. They'll be throwing up before a big exam. I would have swum in the morning. I'm tired. I'm calm. I finished my event and I come and do my board exam. So I never missed even a single session for my boards. To my board exams, I did morning session, exam, evening session. So I think it just gives you some kind of qualities that will take you through the rest of your life. So in my 40s, I've realized that I am probably fitter than a lot of the other people, but also I can focus on strength. I can take up new sports. So I keep encouraging women at any age. Like we've taught people at the age of 80. to learn swimming.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because sometimes their parents said in those days, don't swim, it's dangerous. Maybe they've had a bad experience.
There was a subconscious
Yeah, exactly.
desire.
They were scared, so they told the kids, don't swim, it's dangerous. When they're older, they look at their grandkids, they bring their grandkids for classes and they're like, wow, I would love to do that. It looks fun.
Yeah.
And a sport like swimming, anybody can do it. You can be doing it at 1. A parent can be taking an infant to the
no
water.
impact.
Yeah, you can do it when you're pregnant. So there are no excuses. All the excuses are in your head. Facilities are better. Equipment has gotten better, easily accessible. There's so many brands where you're able to get sports goods. Like I swam the Olympics without goggles because we didn't get good goggles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think I was the only swimmer who swam the Olympic heats without goggles because I could not trust the goggles, the quality that we had. They would keep leaking, and that's a horrible thing to have water fill up. So my solution was swim without goggles.
My God.
So I tell kids these days that guys, you have the best equipment. Yeah. My daughters probably have 10 swimsuits, which they can change one every day. For me, my first fancy race suit was when I went to the Olympics. Every Olympian got a suit so that everyone could be equal, and that's my first feeling of, wow, I'm at the same level as these people. But you don't need the fancy equipment. You don't need all that. And even if you want it, you have it nowadays. And if you can't afford it, there are companies who will give it to you if you're good enough. So the opportunities and pathways are there. So we just have to make things much easier now by just getting everybody active and moving. And in the 40s, it is more important, 40s, 50s, if we have the strength to be independent. It's not about performance. I think in my age, while I have that competitive streak, I take part in the CrossFit Games. I'm doing an Ocean Man 5K swim in a few months. I set some goals for myself, but I do it mainly to keep active. And I feel like such a huge connect between mental and physical health.
Right.
When I do my workout, I feel fresh. I've moved my body. It kind of de-stresses you because you're focusing on the task at hand. So I think the main thing killing people is not even inactivity, it's stress.
Right.
So if you can use sports as a way of releasing that stress, after a tough day, go for a swim or go and play football at even 11 p.m. in the night. It's become such a big, the famous now paddleball and pickleball, which I would be very bad at. Just get moving and there are only benefits, right? There are no negative effects of any kind of sport. There might be a few injuries, but you can walk down a Bangalore road and get injured.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So you might as well be in a sport learning a new skill.
No, fabulous. So I remember, when I was trying to actually learn swimming in my college days, it is like such a funny thing. So I went to VIT and then it had a huge 50-meter pool, like a full Olympic-sized pool. So when you see that for the first time coming from a small town, you feel like, oh my God, let's try and learn this thing, right? So I enrolled into it. And then first semester, you're still a child and you're making so many friends for the first time. You're sleeping late nights. So when I enrolled, I literally bunked all of most of it.
So you didn't learn?
So I didn't learn at all in my first semester. And then towards the end of the semester, I realized that, oh my God, I have paid money for this, so I need to at least go now. The semester was ending. And that swimming teacher was, was a very difficult guy.
Yes.
So everybody in that swimming batch had actually moved from the narrower end to the deeper end. I didn't know anything. Like literally, I just knew in the first class, they had taught me to
move your legs.
Move your legs, right? So that's all that I was aware of. And then they moved everybody to the deeper end. Everyone was supposed to dive and cross breadthwise. I was like, my God, I just know how to really move my legs. Now I remember I was so damn scared, but he still pushed me into water, right? And that's fear of water then remained with me for a very, very long time to come, right? And then I had to overcome it through my own self-learning when I was in Mumbai, in my college, like in my working days, etc. And I feel that in India, somehow people have that scare because nobody really knows what's the right way of learning swimming, right? Do you think it's a fearful thing? Like
definitely.
So what message would you have for anyone watching this podcast today? What's the right way of learning swimming?
The most important thing is first to make it fun. So what makes swimming very scary? Like you would not be scared going to a football class of football because you're on land. You can take a break. So water being a different medium, that's what makes it scary. And when you're in the water, the buoyancy of the water, which also helps you float, also scares you because you'd feel off balance.
Right.
And at the same time, it's a tough sport because water is almost 800 times denser than air.
Right.
So everything takes a lot of time, effort, practice, and technique. So what has changed, I feel, which is for the good, is that our swim teachers at the grassroots level are not teaching through fear.
Right.
They're trying to make it fun. They're trying to engage with the kids or adults. Sometimes, like you said, an adult is taught like a kid. They're just thrown in.
Yeah.
So that's not the correct way. Some people still learnt that way, but they don't love the sport. So first, let them enjoy it. So when we do these swim courses where we train teachers the Australian way, they do months of water familiarization.
Wow.
Where it's just walking, turning, floating. They don't do swimming yet. It's not like go from point A to point B.
Yes.
Now, in India, obviously, if we tell parents when they've paid for classes that I'll make your child float for 1 year, they won't have any, any clients coming back.
Yeah.
So you have to find that middle ground where we're trying to get towards where in America or Australia is what is working for them. But we have to change the mindset. So one is educate the parents,
Right.
The certificate system to show that these are the skills that will be learned.
Right.
And we have to make people enjoy it where even if it's an individual sport, in a race you'll swim individually. Swimming is such a community driven, not most sports, very few sports I feel where you're doing it on your own. So you come there to have a big group of friends. So that really gives you that excitement to come back.
Right.
So I think swim teachers need to know how to deal with youngsters or older people. So beginners, it's very scary to take up any new sport, but swimming even more so. But what I have to tell you is guarantee that at any age, you can learn.
Right.
I've seen pregnant women learn. I've seen kids who used to cry and cry and cry. Sometimes I tell the parents, let them be at home for a few more months. Let them want to come back. Just let them play. If you go on a hotel, to a hotel on a holiday, let them play in the pool with you.
Yeah.
So one is you also take part in the activity. I see so many times parents will say, why aren't my children learning?
Yeah.
Do you know how to swim? No, don't know, So I tell them, why don't you learn? When they learn, they're like, oh, wow, my kids are amazing. They're floating. I can't even float. Then they realize that just because it's a different medium, you need to take the time. And this is not something you can learn on YouTube.
Yeah.
Maybe you can look at a few videos and refine it.
Yeah.
But it's one of these sports where you have to have a good qualified teacher or even a friend who's very good who can help you. But getting the right guidance because it's all about technique.
Absolutely.
We've seen people who are really strong bodybuilders. They're not even able to swim a few meters.
Correct.
And I can see somebody who may appear unfit, but they're able to swim very well because they've learned the technique. Yeah. So learn the skills, go to a place where safety is the number one priority. Remember that swimming is always dangerous. When you're in, on, around water, you have to be safe.
Yeah.
If you can take care of that and learn proper technique, anybody in India at any age can learn. There is no barrier to that.
That's just amazing. I just hope more and more people learn because we were just discussing right before starting this podcast that drowning is such a major risk to life in India, and it's real. It's not even
Definitely.
Fiction. Okay, so that actually brings me to the end of this podcast. But before closing, today's session, if I were to ask you, what would be your one message to Indian parents looking to enroll their child into swimming? Why should they do that? And what would be your one message to the Indian parent?
I would say that every person, not just kid, needs to know how to swim purely because it's a life-saving skill. But secondary because it opens up a multitude of opportunities, whether it is casual swimming, whether it's enjoying water sports on holidays, and involving in a community activity and very low impact on your bones and joints. So it's a sport that can be done throughout your life. Like maybe you wouldn't do boxing throughout your life, but swimming from a toddler right to somebody in their 70s, 80s, we have masters, world champions who are 100 plus.
Wow.
So shows you how longevity in the sport is possible. So this is a sport that you should prioritize and you really have no excuse. There's always a pool close to you and there is equipment available. So take that first step and go out there and enroll and learn how to swim.
Awesome. That was amazing chatting with you, Nisha. And we hope that more Indians embrace swimming. It's a life-saving skill. Less than 1%, rather less than 0.5% of Indians know how to swim. We have seen so many foreigners sort of enjoying wave surfing, deep ocean swimming, open water swimming, and we just keep looking at them. I think it's time to change that. See you on the next podcast. Thank you, everyone.